Well, thank you for coming, Courtney.
Thanks so much.
All the way from...
Nottingham in the UK, so Robin Hood County.
Okay. Anyone else here from that area? Yeah, okay. There you go. Yeah, there's people here from everywhere. It's amazing. So today we're going to talk about overcoming challenges in hardware support. Maybe that sounds like a very, down the funnel conversation, but I actually think if we take a lot of the learning lessons from today so far and the idea of a mind for the bicycle, what we heard from David Hansen earlier, I think there may be the need for a mind for support in the world of hardware, because I think we're all consumers of hardware and devices, and support can be pretty challenging. And so I think having Courtney here could be really helpful for a lot of us, either as customers or as consumers. So let's just start by learning a little bit about your role, and if you don't mind just explaining a little bit more about what Mavenoid does.
Yeah, certainly. So hi everyone, my name is Courtney Goodsell. I'm a product manager at Mavenoid. Mavenoid, we're a product support platform. As we said, we focus on automating and scaling customer support teams. As James mentioned, we focus very specifically on hardware. And the reason why we decided to focus on hardware is because the approach is very different to that of when you're going to a support team and asking, I've got the wrong clothes size and I need to return my item. So we go into a troubleshooting mode, and this requires a more informed and guided approach. And I'll give an analogy of how Mavenoid works. So if we use the doctor analogy of a patient goes into a doctor's surgery and they say, hey doctor, my elbow hurts. And now with the years of expertise and knowledge in this doctor's mind, what they're able to do is ask her a number of follow-up questions and understand what the best solution is in order to solve that problem. And now that's exactly how Mavenoid works. So we understand from the get-go the intent of the customer when they're coming to you with a query. So we have a proprietary hardware natural language understanding, which means that we're not considering they're asking about the weather or the time or how to wash their cat. And then from that, we're able to serve a number of solutions. Now, if we aren't able to solve that problem for the customer, we then escalate it into live support. And where we focus in hardware, this is also optimized as well. So we have features such as video support, which allows the agent to be able to understand what the customer's problem is by the customer being able to show the device itself, to be able to guide that customer into solving the problem, or even when the customer can't express themselves in a way over text or other things. And then all of that wrapped up is in a feedback loop, so we're aiming to continuously improve that self-service. And why we do that, of course, is to scale, and especially in micromobility. I mean, customer support at scale at the moment is pretty imperative.
Okay. And I think you guys have some news and a recent announcement, so I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so we're really excited to share that we've just secured our Series B funding at 30 million. This has been led by Smedvig Capital with new and existing participants as well, including our very own customer ABB. And with that, it means that we can now invest even more into our products, into AI and scaling these teams.
Awesome, congratulations, that's been fantastic. Okay, so one of the things I would love your feedback on as a product manager, I feel like so much of our industry, especially with micromobility, the customer is often guilty until proven innocent in a support situation. If I leave a bike and maybe I don't close the dock correctly, I'm charged. And the onus is on me to recover my, the penalty I've been given. Even though I would think that they would know my intent was good and, maybe there would be a better way to change that in the background where I can be innocent until proven guilty. How do you help with that? What can you do? What are the challenges? I mean, I don't think any of these people do it. These companies do it because they just want to charge me extra money.
Yeah.
They realize how terrible of an experience that is. But how do you overcome that? What are the probably many solutions that allow you to overcome a situation like that so the customer isn't left with such a bad experience?
I think when we're going through a hyper growth stage as well, it gets really easy to be in a reactive state. So you have these tickets piling up in your support system, you're having to hire continuously, and you get a bit stuck in a rut, and you don't start thinking about what the customer actually needs. Now, there's a lot of automation that we put in place, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. But it's all about being proactive as well. So if we can identify trends of the issues that customers are coming to you with, why don't we be more proactive in that space? So if it's a maintenance issue, so the bikes, so if we're talking about the owned space, if they're having a problem and it could have been prevented with maintenance, how do we encourage that user to maintain that? But also when we have IoT, so if we can detect these errors, why not automatically send that solution to that customer? So even if that's hey, this device has error code 10, what is error code 10? Usually you have to Google what is error code 10, and you get that notification, hit OK, and now you're taken through a step-by-step guide on how to solve that problem, or by utilising automation, solve that problem within that device itself.
Okay, so let's just use error code 10 as an example. I have a Mavenoid bike. It often will spit an error code at me. Why? Again, the onus is on the customer to see the error code, go to Google, figure out what error code 10 is. Why? I have the Mavenoid app. I have, it knows what that error code is, ideally, if it's talking up to the cloud. Why isn't Mavenoid sending me an email with, this is what, error code 10 means nothing to me. Like that's engineers speak for something. Why isn't that already been done? Why isn't that automated so often in the process?
I think a lot of that has to do with, especially when you're adding new features and especially with hardware, things go wrong all the time. So error code 10 is one example, but you'll go through to error code 110 and more problems come up. They may be user errors, device errors. And the problem is that support teams can't keep up.
Yeah.
And the reason why they can't keep up is because these typical tools, you have to utilize these decision trees where you go, customer says Y, so take them to X. And this means that you have to have a whole support org dedicated to building this thing. So that's exactly where Mavenoid comes in, utilizing existing content, building in feedback loops from the agents, from the customer themselves, but also utilizing AI to understand those trends, but also look at what customers are actually searching for already. So if we have a brand, and what our AI will do is we'll search for those problems against that brand.
Yeah.
So community forums and public information, we'll utilize that to feed back into the product. But as I mentioned, with the existing tool set, it becomes incredibly difficult to keep on top of that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the AI concept and maybe just break that apart a little bit more. So your AI is going out, it's looking at common search patterns against a very specific piece of hardware or tool. I would just love to learn more about that. How does that exactly work?
Yeah, so what we, so I guess there's 3 stages. So it's going back to, so we look at what the brand is and then just search public available information and serve it back within the canvas. And what our canvas is how we build out the assistant. So we're taking actually one extra step away from the brand and identifying the product that the customer's talking about. So if you're in the own space and you have 10 scooters on your books, you'll be able to detect what product that customer is searching for, what problem they're having with that product, put that directly into where you build out that content, and then it will just be sent through directly to self-service.
How about like there's a rad bike here, Mike's company. Every customer that purchases this bicycle is going to run out of brake pads at some point. Like why, as far as I know, I actually have this vehicle. When I run out of brake, I know my brake pads are gone because it squeaks, I think. And so I bring it into the shop. But why isn't that more automated? Why isn't there a sensor on the brakes saying your pads are out, take it in to this shop in the local area? I mean, none of that seems automated to me at all. Am I a Luddite and I just don't know it? And this all exists, or does this just not exist yet?
It's being able to put that into action. So for a lot of brands, IoT has been on the strategy for a long time. So we have a lot of information about these devices, but what are we actually doing with it? And it can be fed back into product development, of course, and we build new products and we build better products. But what about the existing products and your existing customers? And with that, sorry, I've lost myself.
I'm just curious, like, how far are we away from some of this, like, just being way more automated? So I've got a bike, I register that bike, and anything that could go wrong with it that are just common, right? Brake pads go out, right? We know that. You know, the railer line gets longer. Some things are just dead common on these bikes, all these bikes. Why isn't it just more like, I'm going to proactively tell you you're out of brake pads? I'm going to, where is that in your vision, your model? Because I don't see it solved in a lot of these areas, but it seems like an area that a company like yours, where you're focused on IoT, you're focused on scale, would be able to say, yeah, like we can predict all of that.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of that has to do, as I was saying, of we have all of this information, but we don't know how to use it. And when we're using common support tools, which have really difficult integrations with them, so you have to go talk to that software, that brand for that tool, and you have to request a custom development for them to integrate with your system. Now, what we're able to do is essentially have a click and play, a drag and drop as such to integrate into these systems. So really it's the hurdle of being able to present that information back to the customer. The reality is a lot of these brands already have this idea. They want to be proactive, but they're still set in this reactive stage, and with the tool set that they have at the moment, unfortunately they're not able to achieve what they really want to be able to.
Okay, here's another example. I have I think I saw Legrand here from Super 73. I have a Z1, and my Z1 went out, and I would try to turn it on, and it wouldn't turn on. And so I contact support, goes into the queue, you get the Zendesk reply, person connects, and they say, tell me more about the issue, talk about the issue. They say, oh, can you do these 3 things with your camera, like an iPhone? This is over email. Let's do these 3 things over camera. I take the video, I send that in. They say, oh, I think it's this. Can you try this now? Do that. This is like 3 days, right? Roughly, that call and response. Then it's, oh, I think it's a new battery you need. Send the battery, get a new battery, try that, still not working. Long story short, it was one of the fuses was out. And that took a ton of time on Super 73's time. So it took a ton of time on my time. Spent way too much of their money trying to figure it all out. Like, how far are we away from just being able to say, actually, James, it's just, I can tell based on this bike and what we have on the data of this bike, like, this is what it is exactly.
Yeah.
Can you just try this?
Yeah.
It seems way too formulaic and way too just traditional call and response customer support. It sounds like what you can do is overcome a lot of this, but I'm curious, just to manage my expectation, like, how far are we away from, you know, I call in and they've really got the minority report of my bike up, and they can tell exactly diagnostically where the problem is and what the solution is.
And it's learned from experiences, so we're pretty much already there. So we're able to utilize existing information about, as you mentioned, the customer, about the device itself, because both of those things can have different results. And again, so when I talked about the doctor analogy, it's using that expert knowledge to be able to present the most probable solution to solve your problem. So exactly in your example there of you have an agent on the other end of the line that has been told that if a customer calls in and has this symptom, please ask them this massive list of questions and try and deduce what the right solution is. But if we're able to understand what information we need, if it's on the device already, or if it's a question we need to ask of the customer in self-service and not over days-long email, we're then able to solve it a lot quicker, and as we said, we're pretty much there.
Yeah, and okay, so now that's some of the own stuff. Let's talk about shared, because, you know, I think often one of the major use cases I hear around why people are reticent to do shared is because at some point they got a huge bill. They didn't dock the bike right, they didn't park it in the right zone, and they didn't realize they were in penalty, and then they get this big bill. It's happened to me before. I think Laura Fox is here from Lyft. Like, I remember I've left a Lyft bike somewhere in San Francisco. Maybe they were notifying me on the app. I didn't realize it. The next day, I've got a $70 charge for the bike ride. I understand how it works, so that's okay. But if someone doesn't understand it, they might think like, wow, maybe I somehow did a $70 bike ride or something, right? And then they're just done. You're most likely lost that customer forever, right? What is it going to take for this shared model to where, again, I'm innocent till proven guilty, hopefully, right? And I can use AI or I can use something else to detect that actually this person didn't steal the bike, didn't damage the bike, didn't do anything wrong beyond just natural, maybe some user error. But again, we make user errors all the time. We need to design better products. What does that future look like? And do you see that model changing? Do we pass the onus to and I also want to respect these companies have low margins and they need money and they can't have damaged vehicles. I understand all that. But I feel like there's so much onus on the customer to solve the company's solution. And where are we on that curve? Like where it's, I don't want to say you can just throw the bike down and AI and everything else can basically say, okay, I know the bike's right there. I'm not going to really charge them, because it's right there and we can figure it out. Sorry, long question, but how far are we away from a much better customer experience?
Not far at all, and as I said, because we're stuck in that reactive stage, it's very difficult to overcome that. I mean, we work with a lot of micromobility players such as Voi, Super Pedestrian in the shared space. In the own space, we even have customers here, Apollo, and actually Vio for the shared space too.
Nice.
And we're working on a lot of automations with these companies. So these are still in the customer-initiated phase.
Yep.
So, for example, if you've been on a micromobility scooter, chances are you've probably had an issue with ending your ride at some point. I mean, I spoke to a lady earlier today who was on her honeymoon and had to stick with her bike for hours with her partner because the ride wouldn't end, and she was terrified of leaving this bike because her credit card is racking up this bill.
Yeah.
So she's on the phone and waiting hours for a response, and then sometimes even days if it's not prioritized. So companies are moving into a space of looking to automate in that respect. So we do this with refunds, so automated refunds, and we know the logic behind that.
Yeah.
So there's some automations in place of if a ride is under a certain amount of minutes and under a certain amount of credit, then auto refund. Otherwise, send across to an agent.
Yep.
And I mean, these are because we have errors in rides, they're faulty starts.
Yep.
And you can deduce from that information already that it's a faulty ride. So now it's the transition from, okay, we can automate that in self-service, but how do we transition then from utilising that from the get-go to say, hey, customer, we're going to refund you immediately. And very similar, for End My Ride, maybe you won't be able to detect that, so there'll still be some onus on the customer.
Yeah.
But very similarly, you can automate that by saying, hey, can I end my ride, force end my ride? We'll do a call into that system, and we'll end that ride immediately for that customer there. And now for anyone in this space will know the amount of end my ride issues that you have. And if you were to be able to automate those, how much time is that going to be able to free up? And then once you've freed up that time, then we can shift that focus back into being proactive.
Yeah. How many people in the audience have been charged a late fee, an End My Ride fee of some sort? Not okay, yeah, more going up. And you weren't in fault, or you were at fault, most of those times? How many weren't at fault but got charged? I'm curious. Did you all get your money back? No's, yes, yeses. Okay, so it seems like for the most part you do get money back. But I agree with you. The amount of time wasted on both sides, the onus on the customer, the onus on the company that maybe had to get a human involved. That to me is stunning, of a challenge to solve. If you multiply it by this room, you got millions of people around the world doing these rides. I can only imagine what that. Have you done any sort of total cost calculation on how much time you could save if you somehow solve the End My Ride conundrum?
Wow.
Is that
I mean, from our customers' perspective, In My Ride would take about 40% of their entire inquiries. And we're then able to bring up their whole resolution rate. So we'll take super pedestrian as an example. We're at 60% resolution rate. And this isn't a deflection rate. So a lot of people will count a resolution rate as someone that's seen a solution and then left. But these are confirmed resolutions. So the customer said, you have solved my problem. We are at 60% for that. With Voy, we increased their user happiness by 70%.
Nice.
70%. Good. Across our whole organisations, we are now averaging at an 81% customer happiness score.
Nice.
And this is all by being in the right channels,
Yep.
so the places that they are, and understanding them is important as well. I mean, how many times have you gone into a chatbot and you've put something in and they go, I don't understand you? It's so frustrating.
All the time.
So, or it says that they're heartbroken and, oh, please don't try and act like a human to me.
Yeah.
And again, taking them through this guided approach has really elevated that experience.
Yeah.
And this is why we're focused on it.
Awesome. Well, at the end of our handbook, you'll see the second to last slide is, measure your success in rider smiles. And I think so much of the story actually is in support and how you make the customer feel. So it's great that you're here. We're out of time, but please join me in thanking Courtney for coming all the way from the UK to be here. And Mavenoid will be here for the next 2 days.